One Piece has always been dark. This is a take I don't think is too controversial, but with the release of chapter 1098 of the manga, we're seeing new takes from the community. The common consensus right now is that One Piece is finally entering dark territory for the final saga. Well, in today's video, let's talk about One Piece's exploration of dark themes throughout the story. What's up guys, Russ Gambly here, and in today's video, we're going to be taking a closer look at One Piece and explaining why One Piece has always been dark. We're going to be analyzing a little bit today, so if you like One Piece videos like these, go ahead and subscribe. You'll get more videos and we'll both be happy. To give a genuine exploration of this topic, we first have to go over what exactly happened in the manga for everyone to react this way. Currently in the manga, from the time of this recording, we're experiencing Kuma's backstory full throttle, and to say the very least, Kuma is super tragic. We started off by finding out that he was a sole survivor of the race called the Buccaneers and was enslaved at birth for this very reason. That in itself would be enough to say someone had a terrible past, but Oda just continued to violate my boy. During his time as a slave, Kuma's mom dies and the news is broken to him by his father. We enter another scene where his dad finally teaches him about Nika. He's the warrior of liberation and eventually he will come and save them all. We then get to see Kuma and his dad interact in this conversation, with the dad performing Nika's famous dance. But in the very next panel, he gets gunned down by a celestial dragon who thought he was too loud. Literally 3 pages into the backstory and Kuma lost both of his parents. One of them literally killed right in front of him. The fact that Kuma was exposed to such trauma in itself is dark, but there's more to go over, so let's get into it. A couple years pass and the celestial dragons are having a slave hunting competition just to eradicate all the troublesome slaves. This was an emphasis on the twisted and super cruel nature of the celestial dragons. It's even worse when in the next chapter we get to see the slaves in anguish, crying about their children and distraught that fellow humans would do such a thing to another human. But of course, the celestial dragons don't perceive themselves as humans, they think they're above us. Anyways, we're informed that Kuma in the chapter before this tried to escape but got caught. As he's being dragged back by his group, Kuma meets Ivankov and Ginny, fellow slaves who aren't with the lifestyle anymore. Ginny is a pro thief and wiretapper that leaked the info on God Valley weeks before it even happened and found a way to escape. Their plan is to get one of the prized devil fruits and use it to get away, and so Kuma ends up getting the pawpaw fruit and gets off the island. Oh, but don't worry though, the happy times don't last forever for Kuma. 8 years later, Kuma is chilling as a pastor, extracting the pain from old people and eventually taking all the pain in for himself. But one day, the king of Sorbet Kingdom decided to impose a law that separated the old people from the rich so that the kingdom wouldn't get their benefits ruined. Kuma, who has a devil fruit mind you, somehow loses his fight in trying to save the elders and is imprisoned along with Ginny. But as Kuma expresses the tyranny that the kingdom is going through, Ginny says that if he tries to rebel, he's going to rebel against the celestial dragons, and that's not a good thing. Luckily, Dragon and his freedom fighters pulled up to overthrow the king and thus started a new era for the freedom fighters, the revolution. All this happy-go-lucky shit ends in the next page because Ginny suddenly gets captured. And not for just like a day or two, no. Ginny got set up to marry a celestial dragon and was kidnapped for 2 years straight. But she was let off eventually because she got incredibly sick, and so she fled back to Sorbet Kingdom. But she wasn't alone. She bore a child who's implied to be from her and the celestial dragon. This sickness kills her because of her excessive exposure to the sun, and so Kuma is left to raise the daughter she brought along with her. The baby is someone we now know as Bonnie. Now, I'm not going to use any triggering words, but I think you can piece together what exactly from this last piece is what everybody had on their minds. Ginny was captured and set up as a bride, then 2 years later has a child. That's super dark, and I don't think anyone else can argue against that. But the point is that One Piece has always been this dark. What One Piece does different is its exploration of dark themes with a twist that makes it seem like it doesn't have a serious tone. For example, let's compare One Piece to a series like Hunter x Hunter. One Piece definitely explores way darker themes, but Hunter x Hunter's execution of their own dark themes gives a tone that is taken seriously every single time. My favorite example of this was near the beginning of the Chimera Ant arc when Gon, Killua, and Kite were fighting a trio of ants. Entering the scene, one of the ants had 2 humans as literal dogs on a leash and naked. And as soon as the ant got bored of them, he killed one of them. The others saw this and literally started barking like a dog to be spared from death. Sadly, it just led to his death even faster. Hunter x Hunter's characterization of this slave made you take this problem more seriously, as well as the reaction of the cast when they see it take place. If you actually read the arc, it started off dark. Everyone started dying. But compare that to maybe Dressrosa, where we started off happy-go-lucky and soon found out the dark lore. In specific, we can talk about Law's backstory, where his entire town was exterminated for having a rare disease, and Law had to hide under a pile of corpses in order to survive. This was incredibly dark, but honestly, from my perspective, I didn't even really notice this because 1, One Piece's overall good vibe tone, and 2, the tone that Dressrosa already had. We literally had an antagonist who everyone would laugh at for having a high-pitched voice. And this is what differentiates One Piece from other series. As I said, One Piece definitely explored more dark themes than Hunter x Hunter, but Hunter x Hunter seems darker. It's a matter of tone setting. And so from here, I just want to look into different instances when One Piece was truly dark, but One Piece's execution of it made it seem subtle and more viewer friendly. The earliest example I could think of was when Kuina died to some stairs. Now there's this very well-known theory within the community that Kuina didn't actually die by accident, but committed suicide. Now I'm not saying that this is true or not true, but if this was actually what Oda was going for, that's truly dark. But again, his execution of it made it ambiguous. So me personally, I passed through without actually thinking deeply about it. Before I actually continue, I'd like to make it clear that I'm not saying One Piece is necessarily doing a bad thing mixing up tones. I actually think it's a good thing for business because it would appeal to younger audiences. The point of this is to show that One Piece has always been dark, but sometimes it's kind of overlooked because of the way Oda mixes up tones. An example where tones were mixed up but the darkness was very present was the Ohara massacre. Now this was actually crazy and it was an exploration of genocide. The tone of the backstory before the massacre was super uplifting, but the massacre was so insanely gut-wrenching that it does make you feel the darkness of the One Piece world. But that was the point, because notice that this was the first showcase of the Celestial Dragons, or in specific, the 5 Elders' terrible actions at large. Another example is Brook's backstory. Oh my gosh, this shit was crazy. His entire crew all died while singing, and Brook survived because of his devil fruit. And so because he was in the middle of nowhere, he continues to live on a ship filled with the corpses of his crewmates going nowhere. This was a beautiful implementation of mixing tones, because while it was super sad, imagine if the crewmates weren't singing and they were crying instead, literally dying in front of Brook's eyes. That would have been 100 times darker, but this is One Piece we're talking about. On the extreme side of the spectrum, where the darkness was completely present without a mix of tones, was Ace's death, and this was probably a take on war trauma. Notice that this is a rare occurrence because he's one of the only people who dies in the current story, no flashbacks. And once he dies, you can see how dark it is. He dies in the hands of his brother, and his brother gets absolutely broken by this occurrence. Luffy literally sits there crying his eyes out in shock with blood in his hands. But then another instance with the tone of the arc or backstory completely trumping the darkness of the situation would be in Whole Cake Island, when Big Mom literally ate all of her friends. Almost the entire backstory was uplifting. Big Mom had been abandoned by her parents, but after, she found a new family and then ate them all up. But Oda's execution of a dark theme like cannibalism was so masterfully done to not weird out the readers that you wouldn't even know what happened unless you were part of an older audience. The justification of the story was that they all just disappeared, and if you actually connect the dots, it's clear that she ate them. And these are just touching the surface. There is definitely other examples, but I won't go over them today. And so with all of that in mind, we have Egghead Island and the Kuma flashback. The tone of Egghead was definitely not dark, but by the time Saturn awakened, the tone completely shifted. Everyone was shook by his presence, and right before the flashback, he's holding Bonnie in the air for a shooting range execution. As soon as we enter the flashback as well, Kuma as a baby is immediately enslaved. This is unlike any other flashback I could think of. Its tone was set from the beginning. I don't even think we went more than 5 pages without something tragic happening, and eventually, because we weren't used to it, we immediately came to the conclusion that Oda flipped the switch and made One Piece dark. But what do you guys think? Was One Piece always dark, or was Oda's execution of such themes so subtle that it wasn't? Let me know you guys' thoughts in the comments. And I'll catch y'all in the next one.